everyone. This will be the last learning guide that we are going to talk about for this quarter and for our module on animal diversity. This will be on human activities, its impact on animal diversity, and we need to be able to analyze how these invasive alien species threaten Earth's biodiversity and be able to propose possible interventions as part of our alternative assessment. So in the module, it started with this seemingly good act, like introducing organisms to an ecosystem, okay? And counterintuitively, it's actually doing more harm than good, okay? And you can see in here that this release of tilapia fingerlings along the Pampanga River to revitalize, the aquaculture industry in this particular body of water is doing harm because tilapias can become invasive, okay? And they can proliferate and outcompete those that are native to Pampanga River, okay? Hence threatening their diversity. So it's basically just the same story, on who depends on whom, okay? And humans have known to benefit from Earth's biodiversity because it gives the things that we need, be it in terms of food, medicine, and shelter. All of these are derived from our ecosystem services. Okay? For example, humans use many different plants and animals for many other supplies. No? And it is because of this over-dependence of humans on Earth's resources that has greatly affected its diversity. In our synchronous meeting, we talked about the tragedy of the commons. This is basically the problem with these common resources wherein they will be prone to over-exploitation if we do not protect, if we do not protect them. Okay? Examples for that would be yung illegal logging, for example, yung kaingin, okay? The conversion of these agricultural lands into industrial firms, okay? To pave the way for building, say, for example, shopping centers, okay? Overfishing can also be one, no? With too much fishing effort, tapos hindi with too much fishing effort, hindi na nabibigyan yung ating marine resources to replenish and restock, okay, the natural their population, and that is further exacerbated by poor human practices, like say for example yung ating cyanide fishing and also these discharge from our plants, and also effluents. Okay, so taken all these together, all of these would directly impact the biodiversity of our planet. Okay, and there are two major ways wherein these human activities, or what we call anthropogenic factors, can threaten Earth's biodiversity. First would be habitat loss, and of course, yung ating invasive species. Okay? There are human actions lang talaga that put other species in danger, which eventually or might threaten the the presence of a particular species. And once a species becomes extinct, it will no longer live anywhere on Earth. No? Like for example, you have your dinosaurs and even the dodo birds. Okay? So first, for the habitat loss, this is basically when natural habitats of organisms are transformed to become incapable of supporting native species. Now, why is this problem? These conversions of lands into subdivisions, like yung kay Sinta Villar na nasa picture dyan, you have your factories and recreational facilities. All of these land conversions will reduce the species richness and abundance in that area. Okay? Say for example, yung sa Baguio, yung mga pine trees na cannot just to have, I think, was it a subdivision or like a mall? Okay? Spark, tawag dyan, commotion, or the gain the attention of the local people of Baguio, okay? Because in effect, hindi lang naman yung trees yung naapektuhan, but also those that are living in them, that are depending on them. Okay? And these land clearings have caused plants to die because, especially for plants, they are incapable of migrating to new areas. Okay? And this does not only affect the plant populations, but also the animals that are dependent on them. Okay? And it's good for these some industrialized countries wherein they have some efforts to at least hamper or at least reduce the impact of these industrialization efforts. Say, for example, this expressway right here, it runs through a strip of a forest, okay, that connects some natural reserves of Singapore. And using this one right here, yung parang bridge, no, para animals in one part of the forest can still move to other parts of the forest. Okay? So although meron kang strip dyan of expressway, but efforts like this and also the one on top, no, this is both in Singapore. These are both in Singapore, okay? Na hindi nako-compromise yung movement ng animals. Okay? And in habitat loss, okay, the demand for more space even puts an increased pressure on biodiversity. Okay? Say for example, yung reclaimed parts of the ocean to create new lands, say for buildings and roads. Okay? And this is also the same for aquatic organisms. No? They're not spared from losing their habitats. And because of these, we might be able to relate this one with the exponential growth of the human population. The need for more infrastructures also further increased. Say, for example, this is off the coast of Japan in the Kansai International Airport. It's an international airport that's located on an artificial island. Okay, and you also have the very famous Palm Islands, no? The Palm Jumeirah, Deira Island, the Palm Jebel Ali, off the coast of Dubai. All of these artificial islands are detrimental to the marine environment that's up below, no, in the water. Okay, and the movement of these organisms affect its ability to sustain other life forms. And these organisms, yung displacement of organisms na to, it can become another problem. You know, they may be able to survive in a new niche and outcompete those native species, or they can just die, okay, because they were not able to adapt. And in the case of the Philippines, we have already lost a lot of our endemic species due to habitat loss. You have your Cebu warty pigs because of habitat destruction and human exploitation. You also have the Philippine eagle that's used to inhabit every island in the Philippines, but now it only occupies a fraction of the former range because of these land clearings. Okay, so it's just really sad that we tend to compromise the existence of these species just because we want to improve, no, yung industrialization. Okay? And gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, no, another problem that can be rooted because of these displacement of organisms can be because of invasive species. Now, alien species or yung ating invasive alien species, okay, is defined as any species that are introduced into new habitats by human intervention, be it direct or indirect, or either accidentally or on purpose. Okay? These introduced species are usually invasive and aggressive. Okay? Wala namang masama for these organisms to occupy new niche. Okay? Because they can just if they can dwell and tawag dyan, coexist with those native species. But the problem is on nutrient availability. Take note, limited yung resources in that particular niche. So definitely, an introduction of a non-native species to an existing niche will steer, no, the balance of that particular niche. Okay, these invasive species, some may arrive on ships, no, on trucks, on cargoes or packages, and even people's shoes or clothing. That's why if you have tried going abroad, no, very strict yung pag-transport ng live animals because there are proper channels that need to be secured before you can transport animals from one place to another, especially if it's non-native. Okay? Some of them may also have escaped from farms or pet collections or were irresponsibly disposed of by collectors or pet enthusiasts. No, that goes with ornamental fishes, say for example, I'm not sure if you're familiar with janitor fish, no, sa Laguna de Bay. That's an example also of an invasive species na nanggaling from these pet collections. Okay, irresponsible disposal of these pets when they are no longer deemed necessary. Okay, and invasive species harm organisms in their new ecosystems, gaya natin ng sinabi natin kanina, no, because they are not part of the existing na food chain. What they have to do is they have few or no natural predators which cause them to proliferate faster than the native species. Diba? Walang kumakain sa'yo. So definitely, time will come na you will just grow or outnumber those native species. Okay? With these, the biodiversity of the areas where alien species invade would decrease. Okay? And just like in the example of this coal, which is a tertiary consumer na dapat kumakain lang ng butterfly, but say for example, in the introduction of fox, which in this case, an invasive species, it puts a pressure on the existence of both grasshoppers and dragonfly. So just try to imagine, no, na meron ng kakompetition si coal ngayon, supposedly wala. So what will happen, time will come na mag-decline yung population in grasshopper and dragonfly kasi mas marami na yung kumakain sa kanila. Or it can be that coal would also decrease kasi nga yung kanyang kinakain, wala na or na-reduce na. Or the coal might become another invasive species. So you see, this is a domino effect. Hindi lang siya isolated in one setting. Kasi the coal right here, if you are the coal, wala ka nang masyadong kinakain, your tendency is to look for another ecological niche, and you can be invasive in that niche. Okay? And invasive species, no, one of the major threats to animal diversity in the Philippines is the introduction of alien species for economic reasons. It can also be for rehabilitation or recreation. Okay? Human interest has been the prime mover of the invasion of alien species in various ecosystems. Okay? For example, you have the case of tilapia. Tilapia is not actually native in the Philippines. Okay, you have Orychromis niloticus and Orychromis mozambicus. Okay, it's from Nile River and also from Mozambique. No, and these fish were brought to the Philippines because it commands higher yield and better marketability compared to other indigenous or native species na hindi ganon kabilis lumaki. Okay, and over the years, the rate and risks associated with these alien species have increased enormously, that their impacts are so immense and to the point na it's now impossible to reverse, no, the tide. All we can do as of the moment, okay, I mean for not all, is just to reduce their impact. Like for the crown of thorns in reality, in nature helps balance, no, because it eats the corals which will prevent calcification of the ocean, say for example. But with increased number of crown of thorns, what will happen is nagre-reduce din yung corals. And corals are major indicators of primary productivity in our marine environment. Okay? And this is currently still a problem, no, in Sarangani Bay. Ang dami nito if you go diving in our diving sites here in the region. Okay? And in terms of implementation, it's well stipulated under Republic Act 9147 on the introduction of exotic wildlife, no, saying that no exotic species shall be introduced in the country unless merong clearance from DENR. Okay? And if merong introduction man from abroad, say for example, yung non-native species, dapat meron siyang impact na study para siyang pilot run to assess if it will really be invasive in the long run or not. Okay? And there should be informed consent, no, of the local stakeholders prior to introduction kasi sila yung directly na maaapektuhan, and also the animals in there. Okay? At the regional level, you have the ASEAN Regional Center for Biodiversity, which also identifies the following management approaches. Okay? So yung pilot run na sinasabi ko kanina, enforcement of rigid inspection, monitoring of the effects of these invasive alien species, and monitoring of altered species, no, or genetically modified organisms. Okay, so as you can see, the only way that we can manage these invasive species is by understanding their characteristics and the processes that's involved in their invasion. You can see now how utopic these legislations and regulations are to restrict the movement of these unwanted organisms. However, yung problema talaga is more on the implementation and of course with the feedback. Okay, so another part of management approaches under ARCBC would be mobilization of interagency forces. Okay, very important to kasi hindi lang naman pwede si DENR lang. Kailangan din meron si DA o si DFAR or any agencies for that matter. And of course, enhancement of policies. Okay, you also have enhancement of public awareness. Okay, conducting more research on the effects and management of these alien species and establishment or development of a public database for us to annotate if this organism or that organism can become invasive or not. Okay? So, yun lang naman for the impact of these anthropogenic factors to animal diversity. Okay? Very timely and very pressing issue that we need to look into and not just really try to understand animals, but also try to look at some possible issues, okay? Pressing issues that we are currently facing. Okay? So that would be all. Thank you very much. This ends our coverage for the third quarterly exam, and I wish you all the best for your exam preparations. Okay? God bless everyone.